go. Hello, you. My name's Jonti.
And I'm Brandon, also known as B Squared, and this is This Week in Ink.
Each week, we'll be wading through the Inklands to bring you the news and views on all things Lorcana.
Coming up, we have our weekly features such as Main Street Market Watch and You Made Me Ink.
And we'll be discussing the latest topics and taking opinions from the live chat.
Hello live chat! This Week in Ink has been relatively busy. There were a few major tournaments with some interesting results. The barrier to entry for Disney Lorcana seems to be getting lower based on those results and like decks and how expensive they are. And we've got 2 more card reveals for Disney Lorcana's 3rd set into the Inklands, which I'm not going to lie, Jonti, was a little happy to see that we slowed down just a little bit.
I'll take 2 reveals.
Not ready to hit the ground running yet.
Yeah, I will take 2 cards. Although, I mean, we'd have to try and do the math on it. But I wonder what it would be is if we just got the same every week. How do you know what I mean?
Know.
Like, so they actually spread it out each week. I wonder how many that would be. So it's 200 cards and it's over 4, 8. It's like 10 weeks. It'd be like 20 cards a week, I guess, if they actually sort of average them out. That sounds insane, doesn't it?
That sounds like way too much. Please don't do that.
I'll take 3 weeks of a lot of them rather than 20 every week. Yeah. So, but we've got 2 to look at, and we'll look at those first before we jump into some of our other stuff. First of all, we have a 2-costed inkable action song in Ruby. I've got a dream. Ready chosen character of yours at a location. They can't quest for the rest of this turn. Gain lore equal to that location's lore. This is an uncommon with art by somebody, but the writing's really small on my screen. Michelle Castafax.
Yeah.
Is that what it says?
No. It looks like I'm going to really butcher this. It looks like it says Cacciatore.
Oh yeah, Cacciatore. I think they've already done art for the game. Hi Katie. Sorry, I'm saying hello because Katie always mentions that like we're super late for her. So I appreciate her popping by. What was I going to say? Yeah, so both of these cards today, sorry that the quality's not that great on them. Ravensburger have gone back to doing that thing where they do it really small and on an angle on a huge picture. Just show us what the card looks like, guys. Come on. At least it doesn't have a huge blue triangle covering it up like we used to get.
It wasn't in the... It's not. I just checked. Okay, so I find this so funny. So obviously for a long time, there was just the Lorcana HQ, and like there was no official Lorcana Discord. Mm-hmm. And I'm still a mod in that Discord, was a mod for a while. And we tried to be like on top of things as much as we could. When cards came out, we wanted to upload them for like people to see and have. And even, I mean, people just like to see the full res versions of the card. Yeah. And so we would bug them to get stuff done. I was kind of relieved when the official Discord came out because I was like, awesome. Now when cards don't come out, people won't be yelling at me to like upload the card somewhere. Mm-hmm. Because I saw in the official Discord, they have a card reveals channel.
Yeah, like there's literally one that just has cards put in them, right?
It is just to upload the high-res versions of the cards, and I know everybody at Ravensburger is probably up to their neck and in work, so it's definitely not the highest priority, but yeah, I guess the new cards aren't in there.
They're still in there, no. There's the 4 from the initial announcement, I think, and that's it. The 3 we got and the 3 characters in the Forbidden Mountain are the only ones in there. So yeah, even they're behind. Just shows you how much work's involved in all this sort of stuff, eh? So yeah, these are just sort of just sort of cropped and straightened up from the reveals on social media. As Twilight Dust says in the chat, I think that's an incredibly fair point. We really need to see more locations before we have a good idea of whether these cards are any good or not. This is Fan the Flames. But with more of a caveat. So really, it just kind of depends on how much value you're getting out of a card being at a location, and the lore totals on locations as to whether this is any good or not. Fan the Flames doesn't really see any play. LeFou does. LeFou, the instigator with Fan the Flames on his body. Definitely sees a fair bit of play, but conditional Fan the Flames at a +1 cost in exchange for getting some lore. Oh, Fan the Flames is only a 1-drop, eh? Oh.
Yes, because LeFou is a 2-drop.
LeFou is 2, yeah. So yeah, so it's a more expensive Fan the Flames. So the upside of the benefit from the location really has to be there. So I don't. Until we see more locations, I think it's tricky to really judge this one. Do you agree or?
Yeah, I mean, I think I have a couple things to say about this card. First is I think there's something to be said about any card that gains you lore immediately. We've the cards that are being played from Rise of the Floodborn that have done that. Pretty much all of the cards that we got in Rise of the Floodborn that said that even if they don't say gain lore when you do this, but can gain lore the turn they're played, are being played, or at least a lot of them are. I'm thinking of like Sorcerer's Spellbook, Sleepy's Flute, Goat, obviously. So I think there's something to be said about that. But yeah, until we see like if every location only has 1 lore, like this may not be worth like playing. It seems a lot like a combo card to me.
Yeah.
And I don't think I mean I wouldn't really call the bounce stuff combo, but like I don't see a lot of combo play in Lorcana. When I think combo, I think of like Ariel trying to do her stuff with items and that sort of thing.
Yeah. I mean, bounce arguable, it's more of an engine. The bounce, I suppose. Yeah, not a combo.
Yeah. I like that better.
Yeah. Fair. Everyone, welcome. How's it going, buddy? Good to see you. I think. I mean, that's if there's locations that care about characters being ready on them or something, like it's again, I think it's very difficult always to look at these cards in a vacuum, especially when there's so few of the set to really look at. But I do think even more so, it's a completely fair point to say that until we see more locations, it's very difficult to judge whether this is playable or not. But I'm erring on the side of even with really good locations, I still don't think this is, purely because similar costed, similar ability actions just don't really see much actions in general. Honestly, like songs do.
Well, unless they're songs.
Well, yeah. Songs do, but Ruby songs.
Yeah. I mean, Teeth and Ambitions.
Oh yeah, Teeth is
a lot of play right now.
Teeth
Be prepared as a song.
Actually. I always forget Be
But
Prepared
both
as
of
a
those
song
are
because
removable.
of so few things end up singing it.
Yeah,
I always forget Be
usually
Prepared
just
as a
gets
song.
played on 7.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like this can go either way. It's like it's so hard to play right now. Obviously, with only what we have so far, I thought it would be cool to do a little Peter Pan combo where you can play location, move Peter Pan to the location, you gain the location's lore, then you quest with Peter Pan, use I've Got a Dream, ready Peter Pan, gain the lore again. You can do something crazy like that, but I don't know how viable that'll actually be, or if it'll even
currently
be worth doing.
Impossible.
Currently impossible
because it's 3 colors. But yes, I'd be very surprised if we don't see locations in every color. So yeah, very difficult to judge at the moment, but interesting to see. Almost Dreamborn song here as well.
Yeah.
This is not what the song looks like.
No, not at all.
I actually, because I saw there was a conversation on Twitter the other day about the one of the playmats is Moana looking out over the ocean at Te and everyone was like, "Oh, is this a location?" And I think it's a song. I think it's probably something like "How Far I'll Go" or a lyric from "How Far I'll Go." Personally, but then a few people are like, "Well, no, because that scene doesn't happen in that song." And I'm like, "Yeah, actually, go and look at some of the songs we've got in the game, and they don't look like the song. Like this, it does not look like the song." Party Your World. I don't know what the hell's going on with Party Your World. It looks
there's fireworks
like the
everywhere.
So yeah, that doesn't shock me that the art is kind of crazy here, but it's very cool. Fire is obviously a running theme in Ruby. There's a lot of fire on Ruby cards. All right, cool. Anything else you want to say about this, or do you want to go and do the other one?
No, I think we can move on. Right. Next is Mama Odie, Voice of Wisdom. She's an Amethyst uninkable 6-cost card with 3 strength, 6 willpower, and 2 lore. She's a Dreamborn ally sorcerer with the ability Listen to Your Mama Now. Whenever this character quests, you may move up to 2 damage counters from chosen character to chosen opposing character. I don't know that this card is very good, but I'm really excited to see this ability in the game. It's one that anybody that has played other TCGs is probably familiar with, because I know it's a mechanic that you see in a bunch of other ones. And I think, I don't know, I think it's just a really cool thing to be able to damage your own stuff in some way and then move the counters off, or to be able to like if you do a wide damage thing, like grab your sword, you can move damage from that with Mama Odie, and you know, target other stuff. It gets around resist, which a lot of people mentioned, I think is pretty cool. So yeah, fun card. I like Princess and the Frog, so I was already kind of enjoying this card anyway.
Yeah, the art's banging on this one. I think it looks fantastic. Yeah, I agree with all of that. I personally not sure this card is good. I mean, it's an uncommon. It's probably about as good as an uncommon should be.
Yeah, like Goat.
Well, that's a Goat. Yeah, Goat isn't the baseline for uncommons. Goat is broken. I think the interesting thing about this is it's doing two things. One, I think it's really bolstering some of the Ruby stuff that really cares about your own things being damaged, like Custom Orc has just put in the chat there. Teeth goes super well with Mama Ode. Completely agree. That's definitely Custom Orc is my boss, by the way. That's I've got to agree with him.
You have to mention the comments.
So yeah, you know, good value off of a teeth. Good value off something like even stuff that comes out with damage, like the Mother Gothel in Ruby.
Yeah.
So you know, it's interesting to see you get bolster that, but also it's kind of like an antithesis to the sort of steel and emerald stuff that triggers on things being damaged, because this doesn't count.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Are we right in saying that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. You're not damaging anything when using Mama Odie's ability. You're just moving damage, so none of that stuff triggers.
But interestingly, it does count as healing. So Pabby and the Rapunzel that cares do see that damage being removed.
Does it count as healing, or is it the way those cards are worded?
Well, yes, it's probably the way those cards are worded. Yes.
Yeah, because I know that was one of the first things I looked at was Grand Pabby to see how does this interact with Grand Pabby, and it specifically just says like when damage counters are removed from characters or something.
But that's it. There's what I mean by is it works with healing. There is no card that says when a card is healed. The healing is only ever referred to in the game as removing damage counters. I'm pretty sure, right? Even from set one, like Healing Glow or Dingle Hopper. They all just say, remove a damage. Interestingly, it does say, like Dingle Hopper, for instance, says remove up to 1 damage, but doesn't say counter. I feel like the terminology counter only came in set 2. Yeah,
it's interesting wording. Something that I thought was. I'm always fascinated at how people interpret cards, especially people that are new to TCGs, because you and I are very familiar with cards, and like usually when we look at a card, we know what it's supposed to mean, even if it's not very clear. But I saw somebody ask when Mama Odie got revealed, does this mean that I should just use -1 counters instead of -3 counters that come in the thing?
Wow.
And they thought that like that meant you could just remove a -3 counter and then like I guess give something a -3 counter. And you know, I explained to them that no, it's just 1 damage is actually what it means. But it's just so interesting to see like that clarity might be important, you know?
Yeah, that's a really great point. Yeah, you're right. Like somebody could be like, well, I'm going to remove -6 from this then. I'm going to remove because it's 2 -3s. Yeah, that's a really great thing. Like I don't even think of those counters. They go in the trash as soon as I open them, right? But
exactly.
I know there are people that use them. There's a couple of guys at our league that use them. So yeah, I do think word like text inconsistencies in the cards is I will go as far as saying it's probably the biggest issue I have with the game now. Now that distribution and availability they really seem to have got their feet under themselves with this. I genuinely think my biggest issue with the game is some of the inconsistencies in the card text. It's nowhere near as big of a problem as the fact that we couldn't buy anything 3 months ago. But but I do think that's the biggest issue I have at the moment. What's the difference between damage and damage counters? And you've only got to look at how much chat the beast is it. Which was a relentless. No, what's the one that takes the damage?
I don't remember the name.
The steel beast that soaks up damage.
Yeah. The super rare steel beast.
Yeah. Look how much sort of top discussion that generated when it was revealed, and I wonder if their wording. If their wording was a little bit more consistent, whether we wouldn't have had as much trouble, really figuring out that. Even today, a couple of guys came in just to play a little bit of Lorcana, and they both came down to the counter while I was working, holding one, and was like, "How does this work? I've just done a grab your swords. How does this work?"
Yeah,
and I had to sort of go over it with them, and it's I do wonder if some sort of text consistencies would help.
Yeah, it seems like they're still figuring that out, because even as far back as when we saw the D23 cards and how Maleficent's text on D23 is different than how it ended up being printed, just because I think it was like banished chosen character instead of just banished character or something.
It was, but I think they added opposing. I think.
Oh yeah. I think that's what it was. Yeah. But it just seems like even still they're trying to work out the wording for a bunch of the cards and having to do some erratas and things like that.
And the way what's interesting I find is that they keep saying that these sort of first few sets were designed, together. Yeah, the wording changes so much between them. John, first time watching the show, first time watching live, love the show. Thank you, John. Thanks for joining us, buddy. It's an interesting one. I'm interested to see how they move forward with it. Excuse me. The only thing I will say about this that is worth noting, though, I think, is that you may remove up to 2 damage counters from chosen character to chosen opposing character. So the damage can come off anything, but has to go on to an opposing character. So it doesn't necessarily combo very well with something like Dinner Bell. That's where you want to damage your own stuff. But it's interesting that like you said before, you can move, something you don't really care about dying, from a grab your swords. You can move something over to finish off a bigger threat or something like that, or you can just use it to obviously move damage off your own thing across. So, really interesting ability. I think an action that does this could see play. I think if listen to your mama now is an action. That is an action I feel like could see some play, to be honest with you. But overall, probably just needs to be a little cheaper, maybe, for this one.
Yeah, the unink ability and how expensive it is, I think, hurts this, especially as good as Amethyst is right now. There's plenty of other cards that are better.
Even in a Ruby Amethyst build, perhaps that's using things like Teeth, you're not playing this over a Tremaine in the same slot, right? So,
yeah.
But I completely agree with you. This card itself isn't mind blowing, but the ability entering the game is really good. Yeah, so I'm happy to see that. It feels weird getting 25 minutes into the show and doing all the card reveals.
I know. It's like I feel like we have way more that we're missing or something.
But I don't mind it. What do we do now?
So next we're going to move on to Main Street Market Watch. And you mentioned before the show that you have a little bit of story or a little update on like boxes and stuff and availability with your store. We were going to go over the booster box prices on TCG Player for both Rise of the Floodborn and the first chapter. Basically just to note that both of them are getting lower. I had them pulled up here. Rise of the Floodborn, I mean, right now I could buy a box for basically $150.
Yeah.
That's basically MSRP.
I mean, that's MSRP because it's actually shipping included as well, the one I'm looking at here. So yeah, like I mean so MSRP is actually like 144, I think, or something. So
Yeah.
That's it, right? That's MSRP basically.
Yeah.
That's kind of crazy. I think that's kind of crazy. Yeah. So I can only speak from a Canadian store, a single Canadian store. But yeah, basically our distributor rang us today and was like, "How much do you want? Set 1, set 2. What do you need?" So that's it's exciting stuff. It seems like they really have sort of got their feet under themselves. What I think is going to be really interesting now is whether or not they're going to be able to say that to us for set 3.
Yeah.
On the launch of it, or if it's still going to be going right back to, you get your allocated amounts, and then a month afterwards we'll have a lot more. It'd be really nice if they can get set 3 to the point where we can just give them a number and they say, yeah, that's great. Not a ridiculous number. I'm not going back to how stores wanted like 1,000 boxes for set 1.
Yeah.
But if we can basically get double what we've had for the launch of set 1 and set 2, that'd be fantastic, because we'd be able to sell boxes on launch, and also have trickle stock for events and things like that. At the moment, we're still kind of having to walk this tightrope of being able to sell boxes to people at a decent price, and also having enough product to be able to run drafts and have pricing for constructed events and what have you as well. So I'm really hoping that set 3 seems to be able to keep up with what they've been able to do this week. But yeah, we see Floodborne at 149, and then first chapter I think is a little higher. It's currently showing here at 160 for me.
Yeah.
On TCG Player, but again, still pretty solid pricing.
Yeah.
You can just look at that graph there.
Yeah, the graph is crazy to see where it was up at almost $400 at one point, pretty consistently, all the way down to, I know in other card games, booster boxes sometimes come in under MSRP because you're buying packs in bulk versus individually. But compared to what we had before, I cannot complain about these prices. I'd buy boxes at this price all day long at this point.
Yeah.
Which I think is like pretty, like, Ravensburger, in my opinion, Ravensburger should be proud that they seem to have recovered this quickly.
Yes.
Because people were giving Ravensburger a lot of pressure and, like, I don't want to say hate, but maybe that's the right word, for like underprinting so much. And I use underprinting loosely because I don't know that they ever could have actually printed enough to meet demand immediately.
Initially, no, I don't think so. No.
Yeah. But to, like, so the game released in the middle of August, basically, which is like 4.5 months or 5 months away, something like that. And it was almost impossible to find product, and now just about anybody can find product either at their LGS or at their retail store.
Set 1 definitely. Like, there's no real struggle for at least here. I can only speak of like the local area and kind of roughly what you see on Facebook. It seems like first chapter is on shelves in Walmarts now, for the most part. Rise of the Floodborn still seems pretty not scarce, but it's not. It doesn't stick around at the moment. Okay. I don't think. I don't know if you found similar.
Last time I went to the store, which was probably last week sometime, they didn't have any. There was one Rise of the Floodborn starter deck left. The time that I'd gone before that, which was probably a week or two before that, they had no Rise of the Floodborn, but they had a bunch of first chapter blister packs. And so Walmart didn't have any, but I'm almost certain my LGS still has product for sale. And they started when it released on limiting people to 12 packs a person. And now for a week or two now, they've dropped that limit, and you can buy, it's not limited anymore. I can buy all the packs if I wanted to right now. I don't need to. So
for set 2 as well?
Yes. Yeah. For set 2. I actually don't know that they have much set 1, to be honest.
No, they do. That says more about the popularity of the game in your area, I think, because I couldn't have set 2 on the shelf. at the minute, like with no limits. Absolutely no way. He'd be gone in a minute. He'd be gone in 10 minutes. Yeah. We had a single box of set 1 turn up the other day with one of our orders. We'd not, it was on the invoice and everything, but we're not quite sure why it ended up. But it was like, oh, and there's one box of Lorcana here or whatever. Open it up, put it on the shelf. This was on a Thursday, I think, and it was sold by the Friday. Like even saying a couple of packs each. To the people would message their friends and they would come down and buy it. Like it's still kind of like that at the moment in our area. So it's pretty crazy. But it's definitely getting there, and I do think first chapter is a little bit more available than set 2 still. Probably partly because of the restocks and also partly because of the want for it. But I would say that if somebody was still just getting into it now they're able to find stuff, I'd probably still recommend they buy some first chapter stuff. 100%. As fun as set 2 is and has shifted the meta and doubled the card pool. You're not getting card draw. You're not getting board wipes. You're not getting removal. Dragon's Fire, Be Prepared, Friends on the Other Side are all set 1 cards. So in some ways, set 1 is better than set 2 for that reason.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of staples in both. And I think there's, and this is what a lot of people said about the first chapter when it came out initially, but like the first chapter is very much a baseline for the game. And there's a lot of those just like Friends on the Other Side is a good card. It's going to be a good card for a long time. Yeah. Same thing with Dragonfire and Be Prepared and just all of those very basic, but useful and efficient cards that, you'll see in decks for probably a long time. But yeah, and especially at these prices, like if you're just now getting into the game and you want to experience opening product rather than just saving a little money and buying singles, because singles are also down a lot too right now, I wouldn't be afraid to recommend somebody to buy a first chapter booster box and Rise of the Floodborn booster box this price if they felt like cracking it. I think this is very reasonable for people to buy and spend money on just for that.
I agree. A little off topic, but I want to get your thoughts on this. So let's say that we don't get any sort of rotation in the game.
Okay.
How far along the line do you think it's acceptable for us to see Friends on the Other Side reprinted in a set? Not necessarily in the starters, like we've seen with set 1 and 2, but what number set, if you can put a number on it, and chat, please answer this as well. Yeah, Dragonfire just is new art, but he's in the set. Dragonfire with new art on it. When does that happen, and when is that okay to happen?
I'd definitely love to hear chat's response on this. I'm going to give you an answer, but I'm not going to be very experienced in this because I haven't been playing TCGs for that long. I came from Pokemon, for anybody that doesn't know in the chat, and they do this all the time. There's about 1,300 professors' researches that have been printed, and they come out relatively soon with each other and same thing with bosses' orders. But if I had to, just personally, I would probably be okay with seeing another Dragonfire or another Friends on the Other Side. Maybe I want to say set 9.
Okay.
But maybe a little bit sooner than that. Because I'm thinking with 2 years worth of cards, I think that would be about the time that maybe something needed to make it back into rotation, because we'll be getting a lot of cards. That's one of the things I also have to keep in mind with the new sets coming out. I mean, Rise of the Floodborn literally doubled our card pool, and it's not going to be that dramatic every time, obviously, as things go on. But by set 8, we'll have 1,600 cards, a little over 1,600 cards to play with. So. Obviously, also depending on how popular the game gets, the more demand there is, the more supply you'll need. But I think I would be I'll just go and get this out of the way. I personally love that idea. I don't mind at all having reprints of cards in a set with different art. I know some people feel like that's a little bit of like a cop out, or they feel like they're cheated, a spot out of the set from a new card because it's a card that already exists. But I love seeing new arts for cards and being able to play different versions of those cards, and play older arts and newer arts and things like that. So I don't mind it at all. But like I would probably, as long as it wasn't a ton of cards, right? Like if we got 15 reprints in set 9, that's probably a little extreme. But if they started introducing that probably 2 years around set 9, I think I'd be happy with it.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of agree. What's interesting, I'll go to the chat before I give my thoughts. Hector De La Cruz says 5 years, which I think is probably a little high. Stephen says set 9, which would be like a little over 2 years, I guess. 3 years from the game piece. I think set 5, Dan says, which would be, but that's the middle of next year, the middle of 2024, set 5, right? So that seems a little early, I think. 3 years from Parents Guide to Lorcana, 5 years healthy, if there is a rotation. And that's the thing I want to point out. A lot of people are saying, I love Magic's getting reprints. I love when there's reprints in Magic. But Magic, the concept of reprints in Magic is because there is a rotating format. That rotating format is not a big deal anymore. It's not, it's not the standard format in Magic is not really played that much. They're doing their best to bring it back, and they're doing their best to bring it back. It's a whole different live stream, but they're it isn't really that played anymore. But there's still the concept of reprints is so that stuff comes back into legality, so stuff becomes allowed to be played again. Is there a rotation in Pokemon?
Yes. And I think that's primarily why they do reprints as well, is they're staple cards that just need to get reprinted, and as stuff rotates out, they reprint stuff. Not all at once, but in preparation for that.
Okay, so people are saying almost certainly this will have a rotation. Perhaps so, but I'm curious as to if this number changes, this time period changes, if there genuinely isn't a rotation, if they don't have any sort of rotation and they deal with power creep through banning or through soft banning by just making cards that are better or what have you. Is there a need for stuff to be reprinted? I think eventually there is, yes, because the fact is there just will no longer be first chapter product out there. And it that will just naturally start to increase the price of stuff that is no longer readily available. I'll show you here. I don't know whether you can see this, Brandon, but this is Lightning Bolt from Magic. It was in set 1, it was in alpha, and has now had over 50 printings of it. You can see the first sort of dozen or so had the same art, and then they've started reprinting it, and now there's full art and foils and all sorts of fancy versions of it. This is almost the staple of Magic. It is a 1-cost, deals 3 damage spell, basically. So this is it's about as simple as they can get as far as Magic cards were concerned. It just shows you how many different sort of versions it's gone at, how much different sort of price there is in between. It basically means that you can always go and buy a Lightning Bolt for 10 cents. As long as you don't care about what it looks like. So I think reprints are more important when there is no rotation. It sucks for new players coming to the game having to hunt down 3 or 5 year old cards. Yes, that's actually a very fair point. If rotation doesn't exist, then it becomes a matter of supply and ease of entry into the game. So it's kind of like a double-edged sword, really, isn't it? That if there is no rotation, old stuff gets very difficult to find, so it needs to be reprinted. If there is a rotation, then you can't keep printing different versions of draw 2 cards, so friends on the side will always need to get reprinted for this. So it just shows you all the different versions of Lightning Bolt's pretty awesome. 48 apparently. I think there's probably more than that, honestly. That seems low. I feel like there's more versions of it. So but it's interesting stuff.
I'm unfamiliar because I'm relatively new to the physical TCG stuff, but like, how easy is it to find old sets of Magic? Like let's say a set that's 2 years old from today, a set that you would have been playing 2 years ago. How easy is it to find sealed product to open for that?
Online, probably not that difficult. depending on the kind of set. If it's just a regular standard set, it should be relatively available 2 years on, because they should still be printing it, really, if it's a standard set. To some extent. Like standard rotation is 3 years now, so stuff that's 2 years old is still playable in standard, so they should still be making it. But there are some stuff that just isn't available, and much older than that, you're going to start to struggle. I think there's probably still stuff online because stores just buy so much of it and will sit on it happily for forever. But obviously, 10 years old, then you're starting to get like collector prices. Then, yeah. So it's interesting. So that's the other thing, is that like when our distributors spoke to us today and was like, hey, we've got set 1 and set 2, we kind of had to chat for a bit, and we were like, is this the last time we see set 1?
Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking as you're talking about it. We don't know what Ravensburger's plans are in regards to how long they continue to reprint quote old sets. By the time when they're printing set 4, are we still going to see supply of the first chapter come around, or is it going to be like, well, there's enough first chapter in rotation right now, we don't need to print any right now? And I believe, if I remember correctly, I want to say that they have explicitly said that they are willing to reprint sets as needed, basically. So it wouldn't surprise me if they give us these reprints of the first chapter, and then they slow down for a bit and they say, okay, we finally caught up to demand, prices are at a good point, we don't need to print anymore. And then in 3 years, and so it's harder to find in stores because people are buying it as time goes on. And then in 3 years they say, oh, we need to reprint some more of the first chapter, prices are going up and it's a little bit harder to find, and people are trying to find it.
Yeah, that'd be kind of crazy, because it would be because I can't think of any other card game that really works that way, because it would be down to them to let the first market stores basically know that it's being reprinted, right? Like it would it'd be down to them to let their distributors know, to let us know. I can't imagine Magic ever getting in touch and being like, oh, hey, we see the prices have really gone up on Brothers War, so we've reprinted Brothers War. Like that Magic always are very adamant in the fact that they ignore the secondhand market. They don't. It's a lie, but they will always tell you that they don't take the secondhand market into account. I feel like at some point they have to stop printing it, because they need to be focusing on new stuff, and I want them to focus on new stuff. I'm more than happy that stuff now is down to a decent price, but like that's I think it's okay now. I think I think we could get this first chapter stuff coming in now, and I'd be happy that we don't see any more of it in the new year. Honestly, I feel like I want to focus on set 3 and as we move forward.
I'm happy on it now. My concern is in 3 or 4 years, if there's no rotation and these cards are even still relevant, yada yada yada. If in 4 years prices start to go up because everyone's exhausted as much sealed, you'll never get rid of all the sealed product, but exhausted as much of it as is accessible. And the bigger this game grows, like right now, the tournaments that we're seeing, or the attendance for tournaments that we're seeing for Lorcana, and even attendance at locals and things like that, it's relatively small to other TCGs that I think Lorcana can compete with in a couple of years for sure. And I imagine that the player base is going to grow. I don't remember who I was listening to today. It may have been the Live Laugh Lorcana podcast. I don't remember. It was either them or probably Citizens of Lorcana. But one of them, they were talking about. Oh no, it was sorry. It was Live Laugh Lorcana, because Katie went on a Disney cruise, and they were talking about that the workers had no idea what Lorcana was. She bought some Lorcana cards on the cruise ship, and obviously the workers are like supposed to interact with you, be happy, and she said that none of them knew what Lorcana was, and that Lorcana hasn't reached a lot of the Disney, even the Disney audience yet.
Yeah, no.
And I can imagine like as time goes on and as this is more available and, you know, it sits on shelves and Walmarts and Targets and things like that,
Yeah.
the player base is going to keep growing. And as the player base grows, obviously you're going to need more product to give people, or make it accessible for people to buy. Because right now, and we'll talk about this later, I think we're finally getting to a point that I would be very happy for deck prices and single prices and things like that. I think it's very acceptable for a TCG. It's not detrimental to the collectors. It's not detrimental to the LGSs trying to sell anything, and it's relatively accessible for the people trying to play the game. But if our player base doubles, is it going to stay that way? You know,
It's such a difficult line though, right? Because there's also the argument that, you know, some games have died on the fact that they've had very limited products and eventually got their got it available, and it's crashed the market, and then all the people that were invested in it now currently have worthless cards.
Yeah.
You know, it's all just Ebra's new clothes numbers anyway, right? But I won't lie, I'm incredibly happy that for the you know, it's all sort of coming down and it's becoming accessible and people aren't having to play scalped prices for stuff. I'm also kind of wincing when I see Giant Tinkerbell at $5, knowing that I paid 30 for mine or whatever, you know, like I you know, it's a little bittersweet for me, really, that I'm seeing this stuff come available, but then also thinking that binder I've got over there that was worth $3,000 is now worth $1,000 or something, you know. So it's a tricky line for them to walk, I think.
Yeah, like I definitely think right now very little more of the we need. Sorry, I'm having a stroke right now. I don't think we need much more of the first chapter and much more supply out there, because we're seeing these prices get here. I'm sure you know, in chat probably knows the experience. If you've ever rode with somebody and you're like watching the road and they're talking to you and they haven't started to brake as they're getting close to a car, like maybe before you would start to brake, and your heart drops a little because you think they're about to like slam into the back of the car. That's kind of the feeling I'm getting right now watching the prices, because I'm like, okay, we're not in the danger zone yet, but if they don't slow down soon, then I'm gonna start feeling real bad about buying Rapunzel's at $50. Because I mean, knowing that I'm an early adopter of the game and like I want cards early, I know that I'm going to pay a higher price than if I waited 3 months before I bought cards. And so it doesn't bother me that much to know that I spent twice as much on a Giant Tinkerbell as she's worth right now. But it definitely feels bad if I spent $20 on a Giant Tinkerbell and she's now worth $1.50. You know, like
there's a line, right? Kind of scary. There's a level for everyone. A few people in the chat sort of jumping in on this. Twilight just says, I know it's part of the market for these games, but I really wish games like this could be focused on getting game pieces instead of viewing them as investments to be resold for a profit later. I do want to point out that when I talk about the value of my collection, it's not because I have any interest in ever reselling it.
Same.
It's purely looking at stuff and realizing that I probably shouldn't have gone as hard as I did first in the original place. That's all, really. Espeon says, I dropped $50 on my LGS today, picking up a ton of stuff. From a playability perspective, that's great, but I do feel bad for my LGS that started selling singles at the worst time. It's tricky. We opened quite a bit for singles of set 2. Maybe opened a little bit too much, honestly. But luckily we did, a good chunk of it was sold relatively quickly, so we did see our return on investment there and helped get a lot of stuff into people's hands. But even now, sort of people are coming in and just sort of picking through a binder and picking out 20-30 cards and are happy with the price they're at. So that's good. The thing is, I collect for the sake of collecting it. I'm not here to sell my collection, bar a dire emergency, but I still want it to have value. Exactly, yes. That's exactly how I feel about it. I collect it because I enjoy... I understand you're not accusing me, Twilight. I understand the word. I understand what you're trying to say. But yeah, for me, it's... Yeah, I collect it because I enjoy the collection. I enjoy the game. But it's nice to know that it's not completely... throwing money down the drain, like that's all, really.
I want to address the Parent's Guide to Lorcana says, but is Ravensburger's mission to have everyone in the world playing so that no one will miss out? And I feel like you can do both. And like, I could be biased because this is my background, but like coming from Pokemon, I think they do a pretty good job at this, maybe even a little too far on the like being cheap side. So, because like Pokemon's rarity pack distribution is obviously different than Lorcana's is. And honestly, one of my biggest complaints about Pokemon is you can order Pokemon and you can get a hit and your hit is worth like $1 because like it's just not played and or like a not sought after Pokemon or something. But this past weekend they had a San Antonio regional tournament. It had almost 2,000 participants in the tournament. Sorry if you guys hear the train in the background. And the deck that won that tournament was basically $100. And basically every other deck that was in the top 8 was $50, give or take. But it's still like there's still cards in Pokemon sets that you open that are worth $200. You know, like there's still chase cards. And I think there's something to be said about like I am with the thought of this is a game and I want it to be accessible and I want everybody to play before anything else. But a lot of games, the collectors are kind of what help keep the game alive because they're the ones spending hundreds of dollars on sealed product to open it, to find the chase cards that they want to collect. And kind of like what Sunscorch said, you know, like we're collecting for collecting's sake. We're not collecting to invest or anything, but it feels like I wouldn't go spend the money that it costs to buy sealed product if all of my cards are worth a penny, like all of them, you know, like there has to be some value to the cards that are there, even if your worldview or not worldview, even if your goal is for it to be really accessible and for everybody to be able to play the game.
If there's the problem is if there's no value in the individual cards, then there's no reason to buy sealed product for all of those people who are looking to generate value out of it. And the buying of sealed product, opening it, and then feeding the singles back into the market is what keeps the player base healthy, because players will go and buy the singles they need, but those singles come from collectors and investors and whatever you want to call them, opening the product, taking out the things they need and putting the rest up available as singles. So it's this really delicate ecosystem that you just got to get right, and I think it's there now. But I do genuinely think that too much printing of the stuff, too much of a good thing, can affect it. And if they really want every single person to be able to play this and have all the cards they ever need, then they should have made a living card game. They should have made a board game. There needs to be an element of chase and an element of collectability to the game for it to work as a TCG. An interesting point there. Somebody said that the value of enchanteds should be where the sort of the chase and the the collecting is. And if they do reprints, that they shouldn't reprint enchanteds. That's a really interesting thought. I do think that if they announced that they were going to do that, it would just make the initial print run be scalped to hell and be hoarded. If there was a genuine technically there is a difference between the first print run of the first chapter and later print runs because of a few erratas, but for the most part there isn't really anything there. But if they said that only the first print runs of sets would have enchanteds in, you'd never be able to buy anything because it would all be hoarded by all the people that we hate, and for the most part have started to show less interest in Lorcana now. But if every set always had a thing like that, a chase thing in the original print, we'd have this problem forever.
And for all the reasons that you just mentioned too, we need collectors and people that are chasing it to come in and open this product. If you reprint a whole set and the chase isn't there, they're not going to go open the reprinted product. And so it's kind of it nullifies itself out a little bit, I think.
It's really tricky. Pokemon has got it just right, I think. Like you say, the fact that it sells bucket loads to collectors, yet playable decks are still affordable. Like it's kind of a perfect storm, really, and it's the only game that does it. I think every other card game I can think of, the competitive decks are at least double, triple the price of Pokemon ones. So maybe it's just because there's that much of it out there. It's available, you know. If a goal of a reprint is to get game pieces into the hands of players who missed out, I don't see why reprinting the normal rarities and not the enchanted version is a bad thing. I think it's just because most players want to buy singles, and most singles come from the leftovers of collectors, if that makes sense. Really, you know, maybe I'm wrong in that, but that's just how it kind of works in my head.
Well, and like, I know, speaking for myself, and I don't consider myself a hardcore competitive player, because I know those guys do it a little bit different than I do. Typically, people that only care about playing at events don't usually buy a ton of sealed product unless they just also want to collect. They'll basically only buy the singles for the decks and cards they want to, and even then will usually end up borrowing cards from other teammates or friends that they have to actually go play those events. So they're not buying very much sealed product, period. But even for somebody like myself, who is interested in collecting and does buy a bunch of product, I'll go buy 1 or 2 boxes, probably for each set, and that will get me a majority of the commons and uncommons, a play set of the commons and uncommons that I need to play the game. And then my goal is to fill out the rare and above slots. So like, for instance, right now I have not seen a legendary beast, a sad beast. I've opened a lot of product, and I just haven't been able to pull him. If there's a reprint that comes around that doesn't include enchanteds, it still makes more sense for me to go buy singles than it does to open a bunch of sealed product, because I don't need, after 1 or 2 boxes, I don't need all the 9 cards that initially come in a pack. You know, I don't need all the commons and uncommons because I've filled those out. I just need the last 3, basically. And it's not cost efficient, regardless if the enchanteds are in there or not, for me to go open sealed product if there's specific cards that I'm looking for to fill out my collection or deck or what have you.
Yeah, at some point it just becomes much less cost effective. I think you're right. I think that how most players are probably doing it is a box or 2, maybe like, you know, a booster box, a trove, and, you know, and a few packs here and there, because it's going to give you a good chunk of what you need. It's going to get you a few of the higher rarities that you want, and then anything you're not playing with becomes trade fodder for others. And then at that point, it's much more cost effective for you to then go and, you know, look at singles, especially by then, after a week or 2 of you figuring out what you want to play, what you've got. You know, the single prices will have started to settle a little as well. So, Digimon reprinted some key cards from earlier sets inside the starter decks to make them more accessible. They did. The problem then is that starter decks become wanted by players who are already invested in the game and not where they should be going, which is to new people. That's what I don't like starter decks that have cards in them that aren't available in the set for that reason, because we will get Digimon starter decks come in, and I get players who've been playing the game for years come in and buy 2 of the starter decks because that gives them a play set of the 1 card that's in there that they need, and that's not what a starter deck should be doing. A starter deck I should be able to sell that to somebody who wanders in and says, "Oh, hey, I hear Digimon has a card game," right? It's an example, yes. I know. I'm not saying I know you're not saying it's a good example. I'm explaining why it isn't. I don't think that is. Reprint key cards without literally doing a full rerun of set 1. Yes, and that was the original thing that started this topic. Is when do we see that? When do we see, you know, a handful of set 1 cards reprinted? Perhaps if they have new art, I have absolutely no problem with it, because then it becomes a new version of it, and then it's you know, it's appeasing collectors and players at that point. So anyway, that was a bit of a detour, but I enjoyed the discussion.
That was a good conversation. I like it.
We do have a couple more things to look at with Marquee Watch before we move on. Then, first of all, the Disney 100 Collector's Edition is finally at a you know, okay price. It's still not really where it wants to be.
I thought it was interesting because I saw pretty expensive prices for these things across the board, and even like I bought a couple of them mainly because they just weren't selling in my LGS, and so I ended up buying like an extra 2, but they were about like $70 or $80 or something, because I'm holding on to them and thinking they'll eventually gain in value. I like collecting sealed stuff anyway, but if it loses value, I'm cool with that too. But I thought it was interesting that The 100 sets are actually a little bit below what I saw a lot of people selling them for. I know there were a ton that were injected into the market at the parks.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
I'm just gonna cut back to this for a second because I just want to quickly Google whether one of the big stores in Canada has had these at an insane price, and I'm just curious as to whether they're still
they're still in stock
this way. But I want to well in stock or at that kind of price. Have they took them down? Let's have a look. Oh, that's showing me loads of singles. I want to look at gift sets. Oh yeah, that's interesting. It looks like they took them off. So
like I saw a gift, or I saw one of the D1 or sorry Levrum. I saw one of the D100 collector sets as high as $400 at one point.
Yeah, and that's US as well, right? Like
yes,
so 401 Games, which is a big store in Canada, had them at 400 Canadian.
Yeah, that is insane.
Which is just gross. Yeah, so it's good to see them here. They should be a little bit lower. I think I paid about this for them, but Canadian, which was MSRP. I got mine from Toys R Us. Because we were told we weren't getting any, and then 2 weeks later, ours turned up. so interesting. So we still have ours at the store, and we're kind of not sure what to do with them because we will sell them if we sold them, we would sell them at MSRP. The problem is I've probably got 30 people who want one, and I've got a dozen to sell. So I'm not really sure what to do with them. Probably just use them for some prizing stuff. But yeah, this is the only thing I'm actually keeping sealed now is one of the gift sets. It's interesting to see that the gift sets and the troves are actually the things that are kind of keeping a bit of value from the sets because it doesn't look like they're getting reprinted when they're reprinting more packs. So actually, if you're looking to hold on to sealed as a way to sort of generate a nice collection. Actually, those ancillary products it seems to be where some of the value is, at least for now, anyway. So, but this is not. What do they say? This is not financial advice.
Financial advice, yeah.
You gotta make sure we say that. And then, as far as singles goes,
yes,
I mean everything's come down. Basically, that's the rule. We're not going to go over too many of them here. Everything's cheaper than it used to be for the most part. But interestingly. This is something you pointed out to me, Brandon. I hadn't realized. But interestingly, Rapunzel is no longer the most expensive non-enchanted card.
Yeah, I thought it was worth saying because for so long she just stayed up there. Yeah. It didn't matter if everything else was dropping. She was always ahead of the curve. And we're finally seeing Rapunzel is no longer the most expensive single, and it's just kind of feel like it's a moment in Lorcana history that I just have to sit and appreciate for a moment for how long she just sat up there.
Yeah, it's and I'll be honest with you, you could have given me 10 guesses of what's overtook it, and I would not have guessed this. Yeah, this surprises me because it's is this played in Steel Song? This beast?
Yes.
So that's
this
it.
Beast
then,
is
right?
played.
Yeah.
This beast is played in basically every Steel deck that I see. Which there's a couple cards that have come along that I just can't seem to wrap my head around. Like I know they're good because people play them and I've seen them perform.
Yeah.
Like I see Beast and I'm just like I don't understand why he's as good as he is.
Yeah.
I know he's good. He gets played and he does well. And I've played, and maybe it's because I haven't been able to play with him much with my decks, but yeah, I did not anticipate this card being the most expensive Rise of the Floodborn card, much less most expensive Lorcana, non-enchanted Lorcana single.
Yeah.
Either.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. And you were saying that Monstrous Dragon has creeped back up, or is it just that Rapunzel's come down past her?
I'd have to look at the actual prices. I think Rapunzel's come down because I think it was this past week. I was just doing a little research and I saw Rapunzel was it $30? Because at the time she was still the most expensive. Beast has actually gone up a little bit past that, and he's trending upwards, it looks like. But so about a week ago, Rapunzel was still the most expensive at 30, and I think she's less than that now. I think she's closer to like 25 or 20. And I believe Monstrous Dragon is at least up to 25 or 29 last I checked. So yeah, Dragon coming up, which isn't too surprising, to be honest with you. Rapunzel's basically been slotted out of Amber Steel, of Steel Songs now. Which is where she got a lot of her value from. And there's some Amber Ruby decks that are making their way into the meta a little bit that are running her. But yeah, she's not as impactful of a card as she was. So and like Ruby Amethyst is everywhere. And even with Popsicle, Ruby Sapphire, and I feel like there's another Ruby deck that I might be missing, or I guess Ruby Amber. All of those, depending on the versions, run Monstrous Dragon, but there's a lot more Monstrous Dragon being played throughout the meta than there is Rapunzel. So it's not too surprising to me that Monstrous Dragon is moving past Rapunzel right now.
I definitely saw Monstrous Dragon sort of drop off a little bit, though. The initial Popsicle builds and the bounce builds weren't playing her, but now the sort of anti-meta's kind of figuring those decks out a little bit. The games are starting to draw out a little bit, and then she starts to come back in again. I think as a 9 drop, you're probably going to see that sort of thing happen quite a lot. I always find at the start of a meta, games get much quicker, and then people start to figure stuff out and tweak stuff, and then the games start to spread out again. You know, it's a bit of a sort of trope really in TCG games that at the start of a meta, sort of aggro has a bit of a win, and then people start to figure out aggro again. You know, So I think that's the thing with Monstrous Dragon, is that she was a little slow, but then as the games have started to get figured out, she's coming back in again. So yeah, there you go. Beast Tragic Hero. And do you know what? Everyone in the chat, I completely agree with all of you. He's just a good card, I guess. That's it. And like somebody says, unlike a lot of the legendaries, he's not a build around. You know, you can just sort of slot him into a deck.
Yeah.
I suppose the thing that really wigs me out is just he doesn't have a good shift target, but that, you know, isn't the be all and end all. A lot of the Floodborn characters don't. He's sad because no one's pulled him. I saw quite a few of these. I see a lot of both beasts, honestly.
I've seen plenty of the other beasts. I've pulled 3 of the Emerald legendary beasts. I've seen plenty of those. I've seen all the other beasts. I pulled a foil super rare steel beast and like 2 other ones normally, but I just have not seen this anywhere. The only I haven't seen somebody pull it. I saw it once when there was a guy that came by selling a bunch of singles, but Beast was at $40 or $50 at the time, and I said I'm not paying that for this right now. And so yeah, I just haven't had any luck pulling him at all. Also, another one, just as a sidebar, what's the Ruby rare card that's the flood that cares about the Floodborn, where you lose the lore every time?
Honest John.
Yes, yeah. I have not seen a single one of those cards.
I feel like I've seen loads of him.
Yeah, it's just one of those weird like anomalies, I guess. I just haven't pulled him. But yeah,
good bit of Disney factoid for you.
Okay,
Honest John was the first Disney villain to have a villain song.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, An Actor's Life for Me was the first song sang by a bad guy in a Disney movie by Honest John.
I couldn't tell you what movie Honest John was from.
Pinocchio! He's the bad guy in Pinocchio. Jeez, all these TCG players getting into my Disney game.
I've been saying I need to force myself to go back and like watch all of these movies and pay attention to them, so I actually know where all the characters are coming from. I see Honest John and I see Hiram, and I'm like, they're from the same movie, right?
They're from the Lorcana movie. I've been sort of fighting with myself about doing like a regular like watch along on the channel, you know, like just put it up and every week and do stuff. So but he's the guy who leads Pinocchio into the carnival, right? That's exactly who he is. Yeah.
Okay.
not knowing the films from the mid-20th century. I know exactly. I mean, I wasn't around when Pinocchio came out, to be fair. All right, it's time for You Made Me Ink. This week, Brandon has been made ink. Has been made to ink.
Yeah, so this was a card that I've had my eyes on for a little bit because I thought he'd be pretty okay. I've picked up an Amethyst Steel deck is the one that I've decided to play. It takes me a couple weeks to figure out what I want to play. And Cogsworth Grandfather Clock specifically has given me a lot of trouble. Because basically the Amethyst Steel deck, like, I mean, he shuts down all of the steel stuff, right? Yeah. Like the deck I'm trying to play is basically a mid-range leaning into control type of deck, and I did it because I couldn't beat goats, and so if you can't beat goats, you got to join them. But I also wanted to play something that sort of countered a lot of that going on, which seemed to be steel at the time, and it just so happened to be a pretty good deck. We'll see that in a second. I think Amethyst Steel is a little bit on the rise. But one of its bad matchups is blue, basically, because of Cogsworth. If they drop even one Cogsworth, can be really difficult to get around because you basically utilize a lot of the steel removal, like Grab Your Sword and Tinkerbell. So there were multiple games that I played over this past week where I've been testing Amethyst Steel, trying to find a good deck list, one that I liked, and I'd be on a roll, 5 or 6 games that I'd won, and then Cogsworth comes down and just absolutely ruins my day. And there's nothing that I could do because of that. +1 resist everybody and ward, so it's not like I can get rid of him easily to remove resist.
I am considering how. So obviously Ruby Amethyst is the thing to beat right now, but Steel Song is right up there. And considering how prevalent that is, and how, like you say, steel is just basically pinging damage, through Grab Your Swords, Tinkerbells, and even like the new steel songs that Cinderella's singing, the what's they called, Strength of a Raging Fire, that kind of thing. Considering how prevalent they are, I'm kind of amazed that this card isn't seeing more play. I remember when this was shown, and we all went crazy about it, and I loved it, and I've got 4 of them, and I've kind of threw it into this weird sort of Sapphire Emerald. It's some of the discard stuff from Emerald. It's some of the it's this stuff from Sapphire along with like the Aurora Ward from set 1, and it's kind of a Floodborn Matters deck. It's running Bucky, and like but it's ended up being the deck I bring out if somebody's newer, and they're playing like a starter or a slightly souped up starter, because it's not very offensive as a deck. I really want this card to work. I love it, and I'm glad that it's fucked you over because I feel like it should. I feel like it's really good, and I wish somebody a little bit sort of less smooth brain than me can tell me how to play it properly.
Yeah, I think if Ruby Amethyst wasn't so prevalent, I mean, it's taken over the meta. I don't think there's any argument on it what ink combination is the best right now, and like the only thing that comes even relatively close to it is Amber Steel, and by the way, it's not even that close when you look at the numbers. No. But if it weren't for Ruby Amethyst, I think Cogsworth we'd be seeing a lot more Cogsworth, because steel is also an ink we're seeing in a lot of decks being played, and decks that end up topping. And I mean, he just shuts it down. Like Cogsworth comes out, and unless you have a Cinderella, or you're able to play a Tinkerbell and 2 Grab Your Swords, I mean, it's just like brutal. And then God forbid if they can get 2 Cogsworth down on the field. If they do that, you just concede there, because you're gonna have a real difficult time dealing with Cogsworth after that.
I think, and I suppose that's it really. It's the prevalence of be prepared. Is what's stopping this seeing much play, because you're going to be putting quite a lot into it. Espeon says it's too bad it doesn't give itself resist. I don't think it really needs it. It's a 5 on the butt, and you're not exerting it. I know it quests for 2 lore, which is nice.
With ward, it definitely doesn't.
No, you're not exerting this thing. This comes down and just sits there, much like the Ward Aurora from set 1. It just comes down, it just sits there. I don't think it needs resist itself, but not talking about the leaks is silly. We all know about it. Cool. There's no point talking about it then, is there? If you all know about it already. We're happy to see them when they come out officially. The main reason I'm not talking about them, I don't want to pretend they don't exist or anything. I would hate to think that another or even ourselves as creators get those cards to show off. That's the main reason why I'm not talking about them. I'm happy to wait for whoever's getting them to show off gets to show them off.
Not to mention, everybody was just complaining about how early Ravensburgers release new cards. The last thing we need is to look at cards 3 months before they're supposed to come out.
Exactly. So, I'm more than happy to wait to see them properly. So, this is I really love Cogswork. I love the design of it. Love the look of it. I think it's a great Floodborn. I really wanted to see more play. Now you've mentioned this here. Now I'm gonna go and have a look and have another little play with it and see if I can get something.
You
should with it. All right, let's move into some of the tournaments that have happened this weekend then, or this week at least. There's been quite a few, and some big ones as well.
So I think there's a tournament that you had put on here. Let me see if I can find the date for this one. Okay, so there was the Coliseum of Comics 1.5K at Kissimmee, Florida. That was on the 9th, but it was a 64-player Lorcana tournament. And had an interesting result. So I mentioned Amethyst Steel earlier and how it's on the rise. I think this was one of the first times that we see it do really well. It placed first in this tournament. First was Amethyst Steel. Then there were 5 Ruby Amethyst decks. There was a Amber Steel and an Emerald Steel deck in there as well. So not too surprised with all the other stuff. Emerald Steel being in there is pretty interesting. That's kind of an outlier as well. But for something to take a number one or a first place in a in a major tournament like this that wasn't Ruby Amethyst or Amber Steel was pretty surprising.
It's noteworthy,
I can't say it's too surprising in the sense that it's Amethyst and Steel, 2 of the most powerful inks in the thing right now, but noteworthy. Something else I've found. So I'll just share this. When I clicked the link that you had put at the beginning of the week, I guess, for this tournament, and it linked to this Inkdex website. I didn't know this website existed. This is a great website.
Yeah,
whoever runs this is doing an awesome job. Being able to see all the stuff compiled here, and then the prices of the decks I think are interesting. If we look at the top 8 here for the Coliseum of Comics 1.5K, none of the decks are over $300. In fact, one of the decks is over $250. Built. That's which I think is
one. And to be honest with you, like you could get that down a little bit relatively easily with a couple of changes here and there, I think.
It's probably the Maleficents that are pulling it up there.
It is, but like it's even running like 2 copies of Ursula. You could drop them and put Crab up to 4, and I think you'd have a perfectly acceptable deck. Honestly, I'm not a huge fan of running 2 obs of stuff. Really, I much prefer the consistency. Having a look at this Steel Amethyst one, it's such a weird build. This to me, like it's obviously good, but like it's just running. It's running so many 1-drops and stuff, which I assume are just like bounce fodder for the limbs,
I have to say the 1-drop 2/2s that it's running is really interesting. There's a couple communities that I'm involved in that's a little bit more like competitive based, and I'm certainly not the first person to be testing Amethyst Steel. There's been people that have been testing it since the beginning of the format. But it's funny for me to watch myself create a starting list and then try and figure out how it needs to change to adapt to the meta, because then I find these people that have started 4 weeks ago with this list and started exactly where I started and like moved and are now where I'm going, oh, this deck needs changes here, here, and here. So some of the Amethyst Steel deck at first glance, at least to me, looks a little weird because there's some cards that aren't in here that I'm like, why aren't you playing this card? And it wasn't until after testing the deck, I'm like, oh, I know exactly why you're not playing this card. So there's honestly, I'll admit this one's a little bit different than what I've seen people talk about. The 1-drop 2/2s are interesting because one of the reasons that Amethyst Steel isn't running Pascal right now, or like some of the 2-drop Cinderellas, things like that, is because of the 2 willpower, the Teeth and Ambitions, and the Steel stuff being able to be played so early in Amber Steel and that kind of stuff kind of wrecks those cards. And the Fire of the Cannons is interesting in this list for me too. Yeah. I just never see that card played, and honestly don't understand why people play it, because it's an uninkable card. And
yeah, I guess I suppose the uninkable count is relatively low here. So I suppose you have got a little bit more wiggle room, but it's just the rabbits and then and grabby swords.
Oh yeah,
much,
I guess it is.
And the Pinocchio. He's something that's impressed me recently, that the 2-drop Pinocchio that exerts when it comes out. I'm actually thinking of running him. I've been playing a Amethyst Ruby deck, but it's a bit more focused on rush characters. It's using that Peter Pan Shadow. Been having a lot of fun with it. It was originally a Ruby Amber deck that's still sort of focused on the rush of Ruby, but I found that people could really easily shut me down by just not exerting as much until I've also run out of steam. So when I changed it to Amethyst, I started running the smaller Elsa that can exert something. And that's good and getting a lot of value out of it, and it's nice to have the shift target for the big Elsa that I'm still running. But that 2-drop Pinocchio that does it on play seems to be really quite strong. Very often you're able to play that, exert something, and then use that to to be the bounce thing for the fox, and that's great. Then the fox can go into whatever the Pinocchio's the Pinocchio's exerted stuff. So I think I'm gonna pick up, find those out of my box and start playing them. So that I can understand. I don't get the 3-drop Isma here at all.
That's when I still haven't been able to really wrap my head around much, for reasons you've mentioned before and you've talked about before, which is that, well, I guess in this case it would be different because I'm getting ahead of myself. In my thoughts were that if you shift Yzma on 4 to get rid of an opponent's character, you're losing value because it's turn 4 and there's probably stronger characters coming that you would rather get rid of. But being able to drop a 3-drop card and then use Yzma to bounce it back, or I guess Yzma is your 3-drop. So I guess it would have to be one of your 2-drop cards. Being able to drop Yzma early and bounce your character back into your deck so you draw 2 cards.
Draw 2,
could be relatively big.
I mean, that's, Archimedes and Goons are fodder for that kind of thing, I suppose, right? Like, that's probably where you go in there. But yeah, I don't know. It's look, at the end of the day, it's won a 1.5k tournament of 60 something people. I feel like it might just be that it's a very good player playing this. I don't know. It's a very interesting deck. It's amazing to see something that isn't just. It's so good that we can talk about this, even if we don't get it. If that makes sense. It's so good that we're not just like, oh yeah, Ruby Amethyst, look,
Yeah, and I think it has something to say about what is actually, like, I'm going to say the problem with the rise of the Floodborne format. See, a lot of people complain about Ruby Amethyst. There's a lot of talk about it and how it's bad and things need to be banned, like be prepared and yada, yada, yada. And like my personal take on it is that it's actually Amethyst is the problem.
Amethyst.
Because
Goat and Mims is broken.
Yeah, like when you look at the decks that are topping across the board for the past couple of weeks, it's Ruby Amethyst, it's Amethyst Amber, it's Steel Amethyst, even some Amethyst Emerald. Like Amethyst is everywhere in the meta right now. And that we're seeing a little bit of it in other inks, but not near as strong by any means.
No. It's interesting because I really feel like Amethyst felt like a support color in set 1. You were playing Amethyst because you got things like Friends on the Other Side in it. You got like the the Maleficent that draws and stuff. It really felt like Amethyst was there to bolster other colors. But here in set 2, I genuinely think you could go as far as running a mono Amethyst deck that was pretty good, that just had all of the bounce stuff and then the other supporting stuff from Amethyst with the card draw and what have you.
Yeah, I don't think there's a reason to. But
no, of
I
course
agree.
there isn't. There definitely isn't. But I think it's possible. The only thing it really doesn't have is removal.
Yeah, well, it's control, and I think that's why it pairs so well with Ruby, because it does literally everything else. Yeah. It has draw, it has aggro if you want to go aggro, it has mid range, it's got rush, it's got ways to gain lore immediately and efficiently. And like all it needed was something to keep it in the game, which is Ruby. So
or like you say, Ruby has Be Prepared and Dragon's Fire. Steel has grabby swords and smash or cannons or whatever. So it makes complete sense that you're seeing them paired with those colors, because they do fill the gap that color has. How many possible deck variations could there be? Isn't it amazing that people have found the best pairings? It's 5 factorial, I guess, right? Isn't it? So 25?
I think 21? No, it's 15, because you don't count the mono versions of the decks. Right. So it's like Amber and all its combinations are 6, then Amethyst and the rest is 5.
Yes. Then so it's 5 and 4, 5 plus 4 plus 3 plus 2 plus 1. Yeah, so 5 factorial. Yeah, 15.
Yeah.
So meta shift. Yeah, of course they do. And it's even, you're seeing it now. You're seeing Ruby Amber just start to grumble. You're seeing so I played in a tournament this weekend, and Ruby Amethyst, actually an Amber Amethyst Rush deck won. And there was 2 of them in there. They both did very well, but the reason that the player was playing it was because it was a meta call. It was like an anti-meta call. It was like, I know that there are 4 or 5 people playing Ruby Amethyst Control, so I'm building a deck that wins before they can be prepared, basically. So it was the bouncy stuff of Amethyst, and then Lilos and and some other stuff, and he just ran away with it. Like, it was just too quick. I never actually played him. I did play the other person who was playing a very similar deck, and they won on turn 5 both of their games. So I just had nothing going on. One of the games I managed to get Maui. Turn 5, okay, I've got a Maui in my hand, and I looked over at their board, and I was like, cool, which of the 2 Pinocchios, the Maleficent and the Lilo, do I kill? Right? Like, it was, great, cool. Maui gets to pick off one of these heavy questers, so they'll only get 8 lore next turn and not 12 or whatever it was, so it did really well, because it was just very anti-meta. And he knew that like only 1 or 2 people would be playing Steel Song, and I think actually there was only 1 person playing it, and that person came second in the tournament. So so that was really interesting to see that just the decks that did well against Ruby Amethyst was actually what came out on top, just because there was just because of how prevalent Ruby Amethyst was. So you will see some stuff get shifted around a little bit. I think ketchup and mustard, if you want to call it that, I think it will start to creep up a little bit. I think people haven't quite figured out discard. I think the problem with Emerald's discard is that people are trying to play all of it, and I don't think that's the right play. Because the problem, so I played against a couple of people who were playing discard at the weekend, and I very quickly realized that it's very easy to shut their deck down by just splooging your hand out.
Yeah.
And just discarding your own hand before they can get the value out of discarding it. The second you have no cards in your hand, most of their cards are duds. The amount of times they were like, I play this to make you discard 1. My hand's empty. If you challenge into him, you've got to discard. You challenge into this bell, you've got to discard your hands. My hand's empty. I don't care. It's just a 3/3. It's that. So I think the problem is that they're playing all of the discard stuff, your hand is getting empty by turn 3 or 4, and then they've just not getting any value. So I think if when people figure out discards, which is I think it's actually gonna be a little bit more of like keeping their hand full and always having something to discard, rather than trying to empty their hand. Honestly,
yeah. There's a content creator. I think he goes by Earl Meister. He streams on Twitch. He does Pixelborn, and he's been playing a lot.
Twitter.
He's been playing a lot of Emerald Steel discard. Like, that's kind of the deck he's been maining, I guess, for this set and having a lot of fun with. And I think, and I've been watching him a lot. It looks like the biggest issue, at least with the Emerald part of discard, is Steel. Because you play your Buckies, you play your Prince Johns, you play all your stuff that's supposed to get you value, and it can do well into other stuff, but when it runs into Steel, it just falls over and dies because they play a Grab Your Sword and all your stuff is gone.
Yeah, it's all little.
Or they whole new world, a whole new hand. After they've tried to discard stuff. So yeah, I definitely think Emerald Steel discard could be like a tier 2 deck or something. I personally don't see it making waves in like competitive. It might top a tournament here or there, but yeah, I think it's a little bit too slow.
I think it is slow, but I do think the trick is actually it's not just about emptying their hand and keeping it empty. I think it's actually about sort of constantly having stuff to get rid of. Like, I actually think that you want to be playing Whole New Worlds to put cards in their hand so that you're getting the value out of making them discard. That Lucifer is actually kind of gross when you've got 3 cards in your hand.
Yeah,
but
Lucifer's great.
But if your hand's empty and they play it, cool, I don't care, whatever. So I actually think it's important for the discard deck to keep stuff in there so that they're always able to discard. So I don't know, but I think you're right. It's probably still not as strong as it could be. Next up, do we want to take a look at the Lorcana Playing Network?
Yes.
Yeah, so this is a Pixelborn tournament.
Yeah, they hosted a Pixelborn tournament. It had like 600 signups or something. It was a free tournament, but I think there were only about, I think it says here, 242 participants, which is still a lot. As far as I know, that's the largest Lorcana tournament that's happened so far. Miami was under this.
Yeah.
And I think there was one in France that was in the 200s, and I don't remember how many it was. But regardless, this is one of the largest, if not the largest, Lorcana tournaments to date.
I think it's worth just noting that there is a big asterisk after that says this is a Pixelborn tournament and it's not real cards, and but yeah.
Yeah, it's online, and so obviously people aren't traveling and they don't need the real cards, all of that good stuff. But I believe the format was the same, except I don't think there was a top 8. I think they just did Swiss all the way through, and whoever was at the top was at the top. The outcome wasn't too surprising. There were 6 Ruby Amethysts in top 8, 1 Amber Steel, 1 Amber Amethyst, and then I wanted to note there was 1 Amethyst Steel that came in 9th place. But they had the same record as all the other people in top 8, or as in the other ones basically bubbled in.
They bubbled,
So I'm gonna count that as an Amethyst Steel win as getting in, another time, because it performed pretty well. But yeah, I mean, honestly, not a lot to say on this.
I mean, we
haven't already said.
We'll take a quick look at this Amber Amethyst build just because it's a little different to a lot of the stuff we've seen. But yeah, this is basically the deck that won my tournament at the weekend. The only real difference I think is that I think one of them was playing Maximus and just in time. To get the Maximus out super quick, which was kind of gross. I mean, it's not going to happen every game, but a Maximus on turn 3 with like Lilos and Pinocchios behind it is pretty disgusting. This one is doing exactly what you expect. Really, it's just real low to the ground stuff, and then you bounce in to keep it safe rather than putting it behind bodyguards. Although it is running Simba, but basically, you're going to get you're getting Lilos and Mals out turn 1, turn 2 you're either bouncing them back with Snake or protecting them behind Simba. Either way, you're getting value out of stuff that's questing before the opponent can even hit into them, even if they do have something. So that's interesting. And then the other one let's take a look at that that 9th place Zach Bivens Tempo Control, it's called. And yeah, look at that. It's all the Amethyst cards you'd expect. And then and then the good stuff from Steel. So yeah, they're just playing the Elsa in there, which is a little interesting.
Elsa's starting to make her way back. I think a lot of people, when they started with this list, tried playing Cinderella in the list and tried shifting Cinderella, and it was good when you could do it, but with the way that the meta is turning out, the Cinderella rarely lives long enough to shift the Cinderella, and then at turn 7, it's a little bit too slow to just play the Cinderella, especially with all the removal.
Yeah.
So right now, we're seeing a lot of people play Elsa's instead, because she just can lock down the board just like she did on the first chapter. And, it's a really big swing when two of your opponent's characters can't do anything, and you have a 3 lore character sitting there to either retaliate or just quest to finish out the game the next turn.
Yeah, she's a really good. I'm a big fan of Elsa Spirit of Winter. I put her back into my deck, and I'm having a lot of fun with her. Because she's offensive and defensive. She's slowing them down, and then, like you say, she's just relatively comfortably able to quest for 3 the next turn. Lorcana Play Network is a separately run thing. It's nothing official. It looks great, like it looks very official. But it's just it does say powered by, but I can't make out the logo. I don't know what it is. Oh, Cardio.
Card.io.
Cardi.io.
Cardi.io.
Software for table. Yeah, I have no idea what this is. There you go. Okay, cool. And then there's another purple steel deck. That did quite well.
Yeah, there was the Dex and Dice Lorcana 1K. That was also, I think this was in Florida. This was on the 17th, so yesterday. There were 56 players. And Purple Steel got a first place. This actually had quite a wild top 8. There was the Purple Steel. There were there were 3 Ruby Amethyst decks. Then there was the Pop Control Sapphire Ruby, a Amber Emerald, a Sapphire Steel, and a Steel Song Amber Steel. So all over the board for this one, which I like to see it being a lot different than just 6 Ruby Amethyst.
Yeah, definitely.
But another Purple Steel deck. This one a little bit different, not running the Elsas, instead running the Ursulas, which is the other thing that I've seen people try to tech in for this, but otherwise a really similar list. Just they are playing Smash. There's some debate going on right now on whether it's better to run Smash or let the Strength of a Raging Fire. Yeah. And I don't know if the verdict is out on it yet. Obviously, Strength of a Raging Fire has the benefit of being a song, which sometimes is really good. Smash, you can, with Strength of a Raging Fire being a song, you can usually develop your board and put damage onto something in the same turn. Whereas with Smash, you're usually having to play it more reactively to get rid of something, and then that's kind of your turn.
But it's guaranteed
it's later
3,
in the game,
right?
Yeah,
that's the thing. Is that Strength of the Raging Fire can, it's 3 is tricky at the minute, especially in this deck that's bouncing stuff so much. It can be quite tricky to have 3 things on the board, I think. So yeah, I get why both are there. I get why both are there, and then the spell book, which just as a 2 of, I think that's probably fine. Like I say, I'm not a huge fan of 2 ofs, but I wouldn't want to play 4 spell books.
I think it's all you need in this deck. You don't want to. It runs into the problem of too many uninkables. It's really difficult to cut stuff. I've seen people try to play with that 2-drop uninkable Pinocchio we just talked about, putting it into this deck, because this deck cares a lot about challenging, especially with Tinkerbell, and getting rid of your opponent's stuff through that, and with Madam and Fox. But people are having a hard time slotting it in. It's a great card for the deck, but there's already so many good uninkable cards in the deck that it's hard to remove any of them for Pinocchio.
Yeah.
So only having 2 uninkable sorcerer spellbooks is probably good because you can't run more than that really.
Mm-hmm. Interesting to see Eric over Hook.
Yeah, and that's mainly because for the 3
Just
willpower.
The 3 on the butt. Yeah.
Yeah, you'll notice that in the past 2 purple steel lists that we've looked at, they're running like Olafs and stuff instead of the 2/2s, and that's primarily to avoid the Teeth and Ambitions play or the early grab your swords or let Storm Rage on or any of that the other meta decks are playing right now.
It's interesting that the 1/3s are seeing a lot of play to avoid Teeth. But also they're seeing a lot of play in decks that run Teeth because they're great.
Yeah,
they're great targets on both sides for it. So that's an interesting. They're almost like anti themselves.
Yeah,
because I've been running the minis, the Ruby minis for that reason. They're great targets and the evasive. Oh my god, that 1/3 evasive mini.
Yeah.
Oh man, I got so much.
Good.
She put so much work in for me at the weekend. She's the absolute new goat. And she's not as good as goat, but she's a goat.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of people,
but she's a goat.
I've seen people talk about pairing her with Crab too, Moreland Crab, because then if you have a mini and your opponent's playing Ruby Amethyst and they have a mini, you can play a Crab and take out their mini, but their mini can't take out yours if they're not running Crab. So it's like that's won people some games and gotten them, pretty far.
Yeah, because that'd make her a 4/3 evasive, right? That's pretty good, yeah.
And so, this is one of my favorite times, honestly, in a metagame because things are established now. Everybody knows Ruby Amethyst is the best and Steel Song's right after it. So now a lot of people are saying, all right, how do we fix this? How do we get rid of this? And I wanted to highlight Purple Steel because I think this is one of the decks on the rise that might have a chance. It's no surprise because it's also running Amethyst, but definitely one to look out for, I think.
And isn't it interesting that Steel is the only color in the game that people never always refer to with the proper name?
Yeah.
Nobody ever says gray.
Gray, yeah.
But I hear purple steel, I hear red steel and yellow steel all the time. But for some reason, steel is the only one that people don't change. Yeah. So the last thing we want to look at then, this is from Ink Decks as well. Great website. And this is just looking in general at the sort of top decks. Is it? Is this what this list is you've given me here? Yeah.
Yeah, these are all just decks. They're sorted by date. So these are all the decks that have basically top 8'd, top 16'd, as far back as you want to go. And they're a little bit all over the place, but when you scroll through them, I'd say the average is landing between $300 and $400. There's a couple outliers. Like obviously the first one at the top is $450. But there's also some that are under $200. And I just wanted to highlight this a little bit because a conversation that was happening a lot over the past couple months was that Lorcana decks were expensive. I mean, the decks that were topping tournaments were usually around $400. I know when I would build decks on Dreamborn, even just to play around, a lot of the times that's kind of where they would end up. And I know for myself personally, when I was getting into TCGs, if I saw that I would have to pay $400 to build a deck that was playable and that could win me games, that would probably have been an immediate no on whether or not I started playing that game.
Yeah.
But we're seeing that drop, and we're seeing it lower to what I think is a more reasonable number, especially for decks that are topping tournaments. Like if you're topping tournaments like this, you're walking away with some sort of prize usually, which means you're getting some value back from the money that you've put into the deck or that sort of thing. So I wanted to hear your thoughts, in regards to what you thought is a reasonable price for decks like this. If you think this is good, if it should be any lower, higher, whatever. But I think it's really nice.
Yeah, what's interesting, I'm talking about Canadian dollars here, but there was a time when Rapunzel was 100 Canadian dollars. So just a play set of her was more expensive than most of what we're looking at here, right? So yeah, I think it's great to see these numbers come down. I personally, $200, $250, that's a perfectly acceptable kind of number, I think, for a competitive deck in a card game. What I think is really interesting, I kind of want to look at these. The top list here is a Steel Song deck at $450, and like that seems like such an outlier. Like all of the other Steel Songs are coming in at like $230, $245.
Yeah.
So what is it about that one? Is it Rapunzel's?
It's running 4 Rapunzels and 3
It's
Beasts.
this tragic hero that's really pushed it up. Yeah, because that's pretty much it. Like everything else. Cinderella, she's pretty much the sort of standout at the moment as well.
Too.
The four, but she's kind of like a staple in this deck now. So she's going to be in all of them. But Rapunzel, I definitely feel like you can cut Rapunzel from Steel Song right now and not feel it. And that's obviously reflected in the price of Rapunzel coming way down. But yeah, here pretty much your most expensive thing is the Cinderella package, the amber followed by the steel one to shift, and then this one I guess is going to be the same. Ballroom Sensation and Stout Hearted being the thing there as well. And Flute popped off and has trickled back down again now as well. So you get a play set a Flute for $20. So personally I think around $200 US, sort of $300 Canadian, $350 Canadian is a perfectly acceptable price to pay if you just want to go. Because the other thing is as well is you're not really paying that, are you? You're most likely buying a box and cracking it and doing a little bit of trading, and then maybe putting $100 into the singles you need to flesh your deck out, right? Like, but if you just want to be like, hey, I'm going to start playing Lorcana, and you go onto the TCG Player and just buy 60 singles for $200, like I can't imagine anyone's doing that. But the fact that you can, I think is a pretty good place for the game to be.
Well, that's the thing that I think of is, if you see Lorcana and all you want to do is compete, you want to do well at your locals, I feel like paying $200 for your competitive deck that you don't care about any of the other colors, you're fine with playing this deck for the season. I feel like it's perfectly acceptable. Pretty good spot.
I completely agree, to be honest. I think it's good to see. Be interesting to see where it all goes with what seems to be a relatively large restock across the board. Like I say, I can only really speak for what we're seeing ourselves, but I imagine it's not just us this is happening to. So it'd be interesting to see where it goes from here. And then obviously, it won't be long before set 3's on our doors, so it'd be really interesting to see where it settles then. But no, personally, I think the game's in a really great place. I think it's finishing the year on a real high, and I think it's going into 2024 with really good legs behind it, which I think is a great place to wrap up. Unless there's anything else you want to particularly talk about. So with that, this is going to be the last stream of the year. Next Monday is Christmas Day, so we're going to be with our respective families and stuff celebrating that, but we're only missing the 1 week. We will be back the week after on New Year's Day, and it won't be this week in ink, it will be this year in ink, where we take a look back at 2023 and everything that came with it. I mean, pretty much the lifespan of the game so far almost fits into 2023. It was announced in 22, but for the most part we're just going to be taking a big old look back at the game overall and where it sits looking into 2024. So we hope you can join us for then. Have a great Christmas in the meantime, and if you don't celebrate it, have a fantastic Monday. Brandon, where can people find you?
You guys can find me at B224 on YouTube. I make a bunch of Lorcana content. Finishing up a video right now that should hopefully, I'm thinking about posting it on Christmas Day.
Okay.
Yeah, just planning it for then.
You don't fancy people watching it, no?
Yeah, maybe that's a bad idea. But I like sticking to that Monday schedule. That's usually when I can get a video out. But anyway, you can find me on YouTube at B224. You can also find me on Instagram and on Twitter at B224YT. Yeah, that's it for me.
Awesome, and I'm here, so there you go. All right. Have you got much? I realise I've done this in the wrong order, but what's your next week in Ink look like? Or will you be? One thing we didn't talk about was your league experience recently.
Yeah. So used to. I'll make this quick. I would go to 2 leagues, one a bit further away, one local to me. Mainly because the one further away had more attendance than the one closer to me, but that's taking up too much of my time during the week between other priorities. And so I'm cutting it back down to just the one that's close to me. It's easier. The problem is it's very inconsistent. And so last week I showed up. I think it starts at 6. I was there probably a little bit early. Sat around for an hour and nobody else showed up.
Oh, it's heartbreaking.
It was just me sitting there. I entertained myself by opening a couple packs for fun and sorting them. And so that was pretty much it. So here's to hoping that this week somebody shows up and, maybe I can get a consistent group coming for the new year.
I mean, the time of year is definitely a thing. I mean, this feels awful saying it now, but we only had 26 people this Saturday. But the comparative, we can every other week we've consistently got 40 out. So it is this time of year, and people have got shopping and traveling and everything else. So hopefully in the new year we can. You can get that sort of back up and running. I hope you can, because there's nothing worse than not being able to play the game that you're into, right? So
yeah.
But hopefully it's sorted for you. Sorry, we were meant to put that in a little bit earlier, but I always get mixed up. My week in ink is very much the same. Hopefully this huge restock turns up. That'd be cool. And then I'll do some playing on Saturday. So. But other than that, have a great festive season. All the best to you and your loved ones, and we will see you in 2024. So until next week in ink.
That was this week in ink.
All right. Well, that was this year in ink, even.
Yeah.
Bye, folks.
Bye, guys.